I'm really hoping this is a good time to stream. I'm running into problems, and maybe it's not, but I'm gonna try. What I'm trying to do is talk about some features that I added to this avatar, and then features I want to add to Shuffle Wars. So we're talking about game design and development today. Listen to the jungle sounds. Whether you're watching the VOD or on stream live, you're hearing jungle sounds in the background. It's subtle. I can turn it up. And so, what's going on with these jungle sounds, right? This is a feature that I added because I had jungle sounds previously. I'll keep the high volume on the jungle sounds for now. I had jungle sounds on here previously, and well, it was implemented through a neat website that I do have the chatbot linking, and posting the link to this cool website that has ambient jungle sounds and other sounds that are relaxing and cool. Yeah. Keep listening to this while I make my stuff, because apparently I'm never ready to do what I need to do. What you're hearing is not a loop of some ambient recording within a jungle. That's like the most obvious thing to do, but no. And the reason is, after a while, anyone would understand there is a loop and hear the loop. Instead, I have like 5 or 6, I can't remember which, different jungles, different clips. Okay, I'm so not ready. This is ridiculous. I'm trying to stream because I have stuff to do, and I want this to just work. Okay, so I have 5 different clips. Let's do like 5 progress bars to indicate volume, because I need to talk about the rules of this system that I put into this avatar. This avatar is the thing that's playing the sound. That's why I can make it high volume right now. Right? And for each of these, it has a volume level, right, between 100% and 0. Okay, of course, it's one of the things that can happen. Each of these is being played on its own audio source in Unity. It's basically like a speaker in the game engine. And so, as well as the avatar and the animation on the avatar and other sound alerts and things. Allow me to demonstrate. I can type. There we go. So that sound is also coming from the avatar. So it's a chat bot, it's a puppet, it's also a sound player. And now I've made it into a dynamic mixer for my jungle sounds, because the website that does the jungle sounds I had previously was cool, but wow, was it taxing on my CPU and everything, because it was literally a web page. Yeah, browsers are heavy. They shouldn't be, but they are. And what I saw on this website was something very similar to this. There were these sliders for volume, and it loaded a number of different sounds. These were bird calls or crickets or something like that, rain. And they would actually, you could set it so it could dynamically go up and down. That website's great. But I saw this and said, well, those are the rules then, isn't it? You can hear the rain. For any given loop, there is a discrete volume, and it does go from 0 to 100, and go ahead and start somewhere, and then go up and down. Going up and down is otherwise known as a sine wave. I mean, there's cosine as well, but let's just call it sine wave. 0, positive 1, negative 1, right? Sine wave does this. Okay? So there's 0, there's 1, there's 2. And this period, this wavelength, is of course 2 times pi. Of course. Someday we'll talk about pi, because there's an interesting explanation that makes it sort of obvious. The point is, this is helpful because this will go up and down, right? So if I do a little bit of math and say, well, sure, but let's find the really nice going up and down for these, because this is actual volume. And if it goes down to 0, I'm not going to hear that sound at all. Instead, I'd love this to mix all 5 or 6 sounds, whatever it is. And I want them to go up and down. But let's find a nice up and down so that it's not going totally to 0, but maybe it goes all the way up, and it goes up and down from there. So a little bit of math to like multiply this times whatever, and add, I don't know, 0.038, because Fibonacci. But the point is, this sine wave is relatively easy to do. I can say, please, plug in the time that this this avatar has been running, this game engine object has been running in seconds, and just plug it into this, because over time I want it to do this, and then it's going to repeat. I mean, literally the sine wave just keeps going. So, okay, but then they would all go up and down, right? I started with the rule of like, here's 0 to 100, let's use a sine wave, let's clamp this at the bottom here so it goes up and down from here. But now they're all moving that way, right? So I'm building up a list of rules. First rule is, the 0 to 100. Second rule is let's make it, 0.381 to 100, or whatever, 38% to 100. Third rule is let's use the sine wave. Well, okay, let's add another rule that says, well, let's offset the time for each one of these so that each one can be at a different place in the sine wave. That way it's not all going up and down at the same time. Some of these are up high, some of these are down low, right? And they're all moving up and down at different places in this sine wave. By the way, some of the math I needed to do is get rid of that, which is trivial. Anyway, this offset can be randomized, so that's another rule. And so what I'm doing is building up a list of rules. This is the core of game design. I know this is not a game, I'm doing the avatar. But it's the same process. This is also software development, right? Because while engineers would call it logical steps, totally cool. Game designers are often dealing with rules. And so it's easy to say we are developing the game rules. In this case, I'm developing the rules for this dynamic sound mixer. But along the way, I'm making this rule, and this rule will be true, and then I'll add another rule to it, and suddenly the system gets a little more complex. And I add another rule, and the system gets a little more complex, a little more complex. And the goal is not complexity, but the goal is doing all the cool, subtle things that I want. This is subtle to say some of these loops are at a different place in the sine wave, and so some are higher and some are lower. Dynamically mixing these things so that some of the loops, like the rain sound, is low, while the other bird chirping or the crickets are higher, makes it the whole soundscape sound like a different part of the jungle. It's like we're moving through the jungle. So this is the subtle effect that I want. And if I continue to add rules, I can continue to make the system more complex. And, account for these subtle qualities that I want the audience to have. So these are rules. And it sounds way too simple to say this, but listen, every complex system, including games, is made up of simple rules, and the rule follows a very simple format. If this condition is true, then do this or that, some result. This is a rule format that will, it sounds too simple, but literally, there is a volume slider that goes from 0 to 100. Another way to say that is if the volume goes above 100, clamp it at 100. If it goes below 0, clamp it at 0. If time is calculated, if time is right. So if it's the next frame, I guess is a good way to say it. Use the current time in seconds multiplied by a sine wave, or, use sine to find a new value for the volume. Clamp this volume, the result volume, so it's no lower than 381. Another way to say that is take that result sine wave and multiply it times something, so it's smaller than 100%. This, like if you multiply it times this percentage here, and then add this amount every frame. So what I'm saying is, this is a pattern of thinking where I have this high-minded idea to have this dynamic mixer, a bunch of loops that are playing for jungle sounds, and they're all kind of going up and down at different times in different ways. It's not random. It's not. In fact, let's add more rules because there are more rules in this thing. I also say that this sine wave doesn't continue at the same length of time for every loop. Each loop might be at different lengths themselves. Like there's one stream sound, like water, that is pretty short. And then there's another sound of ambient jungle that is very, very, very long. I don't want to do a sine wave over and over at the same rate for both of these, and I don't want the sine wave to do the same thing according to the length. What I need is some variation. So exactly like I do a random offset, it's going to be somewhere else in this sine wave when it starts, and then continue from there. That's the offset. Instead, I'm also changing the wave length for each of the loops. And I think I did something like a little bit more than the length of the clip as a minimum to a maximum that is not quite twice the length. And I pick a random number between these two so that this wave length is going to be somewhere in there. And so it might go up and down and up again, but by now it's looped. You see, this short one has looped again. And that way it will never be the same up and down in each, for that loop. And it will do different different randomized wavelengths for each of the tracks here, each of these loops. So I didn't come up with all of the rules at once. Another thing to note about how this pattern works, this pattern of thinking, this technique of building a system, is that you do sort of the obvious rule first, and then you build on another obvious rule, or a lesser obvious rule, and a more subtle rule, and a more subtle rule, and you keep going. And as you have some of the system built up, you begin to see more subtle things you can add. Programmers do this, although they would call it logical organization of their code. The logical steps need to be outlined in the same way. We just call them rules as a way to clue you into the same kinds of things that you see as a player. Literally the same thing. If we were to analyze the boss battle, If we were to, as a player, analyze a boss battle so we could complete it, we might notice there are patterns to the boss battle, there are phases of those patterns, and as the boss lowers their health, it goes into a different phase, and we would learn this to play against the boss better. What we're actually doing is reverse engineering the rules, which is the full, when all taken together, all the rules are the system that drives the boss battle. This is all the same thing, and this technique of recognizing what a particular rule is, this format is generally pretty applicable to whatever rule you need to do. But the technique of having a rule in place and then adding a new rule to build up the complexity of the system is the way we do it. So what you're hearing in this jungle sound mix is a set of 5 or 6 loops that started at some volume level between 0.831 and 1, somewhere in there, because each track had an offset and a wavelength, and uses a sine wave to go up and down between 0.381 and 1. Each one. So they are all in different places, moving up and down in different rates. And so together, you're hearing a very organic, ambient jungle background sound that cannot be detected as a loop, when in fact there's 5 or 6 loops. It's the same sounds over and over again, but they're at different lengths, they're going up and down at different times, and as they mix together, it really sounds like different parts of the jungle. So let's remember this technique. We have a rule, a very obvious rule that is logical and can be followed, and therefore it's in place, and add a new rule. Build up a system of rules, and you have an effect for your player, for your audience. Let's remember this and now talk about what we want to do in Shuffle Wars. This is in place right now as the background sounds you're hearing in the jungle from my avatar. But because I've also developed that in Unity. But let's talk about Shuffle Wars for a second. We are currently developing the art direction, and we need to because although it's totally functional, it doesn't make any sense to new players, so having art and sound is going to help. One of the audio elements that we are going to add that's going to help and really make it more of an experience is voice. We're going to utilize voice in our audio design. And while we're not ready to do audio design, audio direction is going to come after art. I do know that voice could really add a lot to this game because I actually have a story mode in the campaign. And although they are Mad Lib stories, where there's a format and then there's like a space for something you add, and when you put it all together, it might sound a little halted, but you hear a story. So here goes the villain, here's the people that you're going to help, here's the event that they care things about, and here's the object that they really want. And the people are feeling a way. There's a way that they're feeling like happy or sad about it. In the beginning, they are sad, and then you save them, and so they are happy. That's how that works. This format, there are, I believe, 32 different formats. There's literally millions of different villain names, and that doesn't matter. I'm not worried about that one. But there are 32 people, 32 events, 32 objects, and 32 different feelings for good. They feel good. And 32 bad feelings. So that's a lot. The point is, when just written out, that was an easy way to say, wow, we're going to have like very organic story that you could never see the pattern. It's going to be totally randomized, and yet you're going to begin the story, go into battle, come back, and the story completes. It's the same story. That's cool in text, but wouldn't it be better if it were read and it sounded like a story read to you, right? In fact, wouldn't it be nice to also see like friendly critters, and this is where our art direction is going to come into place, friendly critters that are like so happy that you helped them, you know? Right? Well, we could do that. We'll do the critters, you know, a couple of bunnies. We'll do the, now we might even have them hop around a little bit. We'll do the sounds of them saying yay and aw, and they're happy and sad. We'll do that. Sorry. Small ones have very wide eyes. And cool, except it would be difficult to have a voice actor voice every permutation of this story, given that they are Mad Libs. So a couple of things to note. In the end, I would like it to be read, and it would be nice if it sounded like a story, but it is Mad Libs, so I'm likely going to lean into the halting language of a Mad Lib and lean into the silliness of it. Thank goodness part of our theme is we don't take ourselves too seriously. And so if it says like, it's so sad that villain took the object of desire from the people before the event. The people need this to feel good, but now they feel sad. Okay, that's a full... I'm totally making that story up, but the point is, that was me reading it all the way through like it was a real story. A Mad Lib's going to sound something like, it's so sad that villain took the object of desire from the people. Okay, so I might lean into the halting nature of that. I don't know. It's going to take a test to see how that works. It's going to take a test to see what it would be like to read off a bunch of people names, because there's people like the Happy Bunnies or the Western Dwarves or the street urchins. These are names of people. And names of events, listing off a bunch of them and having them recorded as a vocal element. The objects, you know, the Book of Wishes and the Lantern of the Setting Sun, and, you know, those objects. And the feeling good or feeling bad. This is the anxious or happy or dancing, right? And also feeling good. So feeling bad, feeling good, right? List all of these out, have them read, and then also list out a number of formats, right? Because there are 32 of these different Mad Lib formats. And literally I plug in people, event, object, blah, blah, blah. So the test would be, let's record a format where I sort of be the space, right? It's so sad that has taken the, from the, before the, because now they're, right, now that format doesn't make any sense until you start plugging in feeling, people, event, object, etc. But it's a test. So I'm going to have a format and a few examples of that. Some examples of the people, events, objects, the good feelings, the bad feelings. Recording these individually, right, with a little bit of space in between so they can be edited, is, a little bit of work. But the test would be, how does this sound when put together, right? And that sounds great. What does this have to do about rules and programming? Well, guess what? We're going to have a system that does this, right? Just to develop the test, it would be good as well to go through the process of developing the system that would run this. I could manually cut this together and hear the test. And in fact, that's an easy prototype to do. But let's think about the rules that would make this work out. First of all, you need to pick a format. And we already have a system that does this. We already have a system that chooses the format, the people, event, blah, 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 and puts it together and writes it out in words. So I'm literally inserting some new functionality in that system to compose audio. Because the audio is an audio clip that will be played just like our jungle sounds we're hearing in the background right now. This is a system that would be playing the audio at the same time it displays the text. And so the system that makes the text is a great place to just hook into and compose, gather, and effectively edit all these pieces together so that there's a clip that is composed in software and then played. So first rule is we need to make an empty clip. This is a rule. We're going to start with an empty clip. And it's an audio clip, but we're going to start with that. And then we're going to have to have a way to chop up the format, actually. Or at least a way to identify where the silences are in the format, because it's like this space here, right? The space here. Like this space written out is analogous to the space in the audio clip that is reading the format. And so somehow we would need to know where this starts and ends so that we could have this audio clip built up. It's an empty audio clip, so it's actually 0 length. And so we would begin with pieces of the format, right? Audio pieces, we'll just call it that, because it's a new rule. So we're thinking about the logic of this, And since this is early development, but because the format may start out with one of these things like the name of the people or an event, or it may start out with some words that are already in the recorded format. We'll have to have the data for this format include these start and end points for these things, as well as identifying what goes here. Is it the event that goes here? Is it the object that goes here? Is it bad feeling, good feeling, etc.? So, we're also going to split up the format because the format recording has to be spliced effectively and taken from as pieces, right? And so we'll insert or add, I guess add is the better way to say it, add audio pieces. So, okay, I'm not doing a logical graph at this point, but I am writing down the rules, right? And I'm just putting a box here that represents like the idea that there is a format here saying like when we are asking to build a story, start with an empty clip, right? And I'll actually go into code and make that happen. And then we will have a method to append audio pieces, and we will have these audio pieces available to build with. Okay, that's what this rule is about. This rule is about taking the format itself that we've chosen, which is already part of the system that exists. It knows which format, as well as which event and people and all that stuff. But I need to split up that format. And then I'm adding audio pieces to the empty clip. And then I'm going to play the clip. Right? Play the clip at the same time that we display this text, right? This happens on the campaign screen. Campaign screen actually is the thing that says, hey, go give me the story. The story is not random in the sense that we go ask for like roll the dice, kind of random number. Instead, it is a procedural, the campaign number itself builds or chooses the people, the event, and all this stuff. So it appears random, but it is the same people, event, object, format, etc. when you come back to it. So it's not random because otherwise those would change. My point is, it's the campaign screen and the story system that is already there, and that's what we would add to. We would at least have this new system coordinate with that one. Because this is where all of these rules can be implemented. Knowing which format, knowing which people, all that stuff. In the end, you click on the campaign, you see this story pop up, you see these characters representing the people you need to help, and the story is read. Because it's playing a clip that was built piece by piece from the format and all the audio pieces, which started as an empty clip. So the effect is, somebody's reading you this Mad Lib story that's just wild and crazy and different every time you go into a new campaign step. And that's kind of a tricky thing. I'm glad we're in a position where we could actually provide this, given we have recordings of all these things. So in terms of development, I guess one thing I can do is myself record a couple of formats, a couple of people, a couple of events, objects, feeling good, feeling bad. so that I have audio clips to work with. But then I would switch and move into code and see if I can start with an empty audio clip and take existing audio clips and take the data from them and build up a brand new edited audio clip from nothing. That's kind of cool. I would like to see that happen. And so there's some testing to do in the system based on these rules. And then I would plug in these audio to test it out and see how it goes. But then what I'm really testing once it works is, how does this sound? How does this appear to the player, especially if we can imagine some goofy drawings of critters or the other people that you were saving or whatever. I need to see how this presents. That is a separate test that I would do after developing this system, which would involve testing as well. I'm interested to hear how it would sound. I'm interested to see what it would be like to record these individual people, line after line after line, to see if there's a problem with how you have to say the name in order to make it sound right for the format. I mean, there's a lot of little subtle things I want to test out after I get the technical things tested out, you see. All right. One more idea for Shuffle Wars. Okay, so this is dynamic storytelling is what we're talking about here. Storytelling audio, like an audiobook. But, you know, if you see the text and you have it read to you, I think this is going to be very pleasant. I'm really excited about it. Let's talk about another feature that I thought of. This has to do with the pearls. Our pearl collections are things you can find if you do campaigns and complete the campaign. You collect a pearl. Pearl is a nice shiny little object. It's got different colors on it, blah, blah, blah. But the big deal is, in the context of our battle card game, your cards are going up against these other cards on the other side of the table. And they represent these over-the-top forces, so there's all these effects and blah, blah, blah. These cards have health, they have power, they have speed, luck. And you drop the pearl into battle. In the middle of the battle, you drop it in there. And it changes the battle. Your forces get their stats changed, or the pearl actually attacks the enemy forces, or freezes them, or some other wild, over-the-top effect. These pearls are meant to be overpowered. But they do different things, and right now there are 32 of them. Eventually there will be 64, but I'll tell anyone yet. The point is, we have 32 of them implemented already. They're very different effects, and some are very common and simple, like just raise the power of your cards by 2. You know, the stat power. Raise it by 2. Those simple boost pearls are very common, and you get them most often. Then there's rare ones up at the top that do more powerful effects. No matter how powerful it is, every pearl has a cooldown, and so we just increase the cooldown if it's more powerful. That's how we balance it. Okay. So that's pearls, and you can collect a bunch of them. And because you go through different campaigns, you can collect more of them, and you get to see them in your collection as a carousel. It's cool. Some may be on cooldown, but that's okay. You go pick another one and bring it into battle, drop it into battle, done. Once you drop it, it is on cooldown again, blah, blah, blah. Well, this new idea, and by the way, the common and rareness of these things is a little mechanism we figured out, that if you have a random number, sorry, let's do it this way. We want pearls that are very common, like among all the pearls you could be collecting, the ones in the beginning of the list are very, very common. And then as it gets towards the end of the list, they're very rare. to get this kind of distribution where you know, say, give me a new pearl, and it's most likely going to be down here, not up here, because this is rare and this is common. In order to get this kind of distribution, we simply say, give me a random number between this and that. Easy. But that would be a flat distribution. That would just be, you know, even all the way across. Just as easy to get the last one as the first one. But instead of taking that as the pearl, we say this is actually the max. And so now this random number is, say, here. And now we do another random number. And now this is the pearl you get. So now it's actually really rare to get this, because first you have to get a random number that is high, and then you have to get another random number that is high. That's all you need to do to get this very nice distribution where this is super common and this is super rare. Nice, right? Related to this simple mechanism, just two random numbers, one chooses the maximum for the second. Related to that, right? And the idea that you're going to collect pearls, and I mean, it's not too hard to get a bunch of pearls. After you've done a lot of campaigns, you get a lot of pearls. And you might be kind of sad that you don't have the rare ones, and you might not use the common ones as much, or want to use them as much. You might want, as a player, you might want the rare ones, the really powerful ones. Even if it's just a chance at getting something more rare, it might be worth it to a player. It might be motivating for a player to give up some of the more common pearls they have, trade it, or craft a rare one out of it. Aha. So here is the new thought. Along with the setup we have for the pearls, we're just going to leave all that the way it is. But now we're going to add something. This is a new rule. And maybe it's like, you know, after you've reached, you know, your level is greater than, I don't know, 10, 15, something like that. If you're above level 15, you can do this thing. This is crafting. Or, I guess I'll word it like you can give up 2 or more pearls, 2 or 3 pearls. And you need to do that. You need to spend or give up 2 pearls. If you select, so you could take a pearl, you select it and you take it into battle and drop it into battle. But this is a new thing that might be grayed out and unlocked once you reach level 15. Now you can select one pearl, select another pearl, and once 2 or 3 are selected, you can craft or trade or whatever I'm going to call it. So it's like a new button or a space where you can place pearls or something like that. Somehow you select 2 or 3. And what happens is, you know, if the player trades, they select trade, and then what happens is they gave up the pearls they selected, and in exchange, they are going to get a more rare pearl. Well, how does that happen? They give up these pearls, so these are gone. They're out of their collection. These just don't exist anymore in their collection. It's going to be replaced by another one. Which one? And how do we know that it's going to be more rare? I'm going to say, for all these pearls, by the way, there is an index. It starts at 0, goes 1, 2, 3, etc. Goes up to 31, because there are 32 of them, and it starts at 0. You get that? Well, this index number is going to be helpful, because we can take the index of the pearls that you have given up, add them together. And that is now the maximum that you can get to. So if you gave up a pearl that was index 8, and you gave up a pearl that was like index 4, well, now the maximum is 12. And we're going to find you a pearl in that range. You're not going to get 13 or higher, but you're going to get a pearl in that range. But instead of doing this distribution, we're going to do the opposite. Simple. Simple. Add the index as a maximum. And now that we know that maximum, we're going to say, give me a random number between these two. Okay. And that is the minimum. Easy. So let's say it's about here. Now we get a random number between here and here, and that's the pearl you get. So you could conceivably, if you are very unlucky, give up 2 pearls and get one that's even more common. But conversely, that would be rare in this case because you are much more likely to get the most rare pearl by doing this crafting, trading thing. So the final rule of our system is select, that's as max, that's true. Select, use random minimum. That's how I'll say it. It's the inverse of our rare and common distribution that we normally do to select rare pearl. So you get to level 15, suddenly this thing that's been grayed out is now available to trade. And when you click it, you have a couple of boxes, and you can select a pearl, and you can select another pearl. As soon as you have 2 in place, you could select another one and have 3, and have all of those 3 added together and have an even more rare pearl trade. But instead of just selecting like those added together and saying that's it, no, we're actually going to, you hit trade, you gave up those pearls, and now we're going to add those together and use that as the maximum. And then we're going to use our inverse distribution thing to make sure that what you get is much more likely to be the most rare out of that range. Okay, so if I didn't explain the distribution thing, this would have been a little harder to explain. It's already pretty difficult to explain, but what I'm saying is you have a collection of pearls. You're going to have too many pearls, and most are going to be kind of common. You are going to be able to trade. Oops. You're going to be able to trade and get a more rare pearl after level 15. That's what I'm going to say. So this is our pearl trade system that we're going to implement. And I think we can do that in code because we have outlined the rules that we need to do. By drafting these rules first, by thinking through how this would work logically, and keeping track of these rules like this, we could role play them first and see, would this work out? Would this be a nice thing for the player to experience? But more importantly, would this logically work, and have we missed anything? That's why you would role play this first. But if it seems good, then yeah, let's try and code it and properly test it out and see if it works well. So, I would tune these variables. It might be, too much to ask they get to level 15, or it might need to be that it needs to be higher. We'll tune that number, so maybe they get to level 15, maybe they go higher. to do this. I think we need 2 to craft or to trade for sure. We're going to give up these 2 and try to get a higher, a more rare pearl. By the way, when we do implement the other 32 pearls, we will be able to up this whole mechanism. I think there's going to be a rule in this system that's probably going to be like you can't pick a pearl to trade if it's got an index number that's like 16 or higher. Imagine you took a level 30 or an index 32, a very, the most rare pearl that we have so far. Imagine you took that and traded that. Well, you'd be going, above 32, and we don't have those pearls implemented yet, right? There's actually an issue. When you select these 2 or 3 pearls, they have to be index less than half the maximum, or 16. So that you could add them together. Like, let's say you added 3 pearls together and you picked 16. You also picked, 8 and 4, right? This is literally 32. Or I guess you could get close to 32 pretty easily. I don't know, I have to test this out. But I think the point is there's going to be a list of rules that help us to see. This is me role-playing it out and seeing there's a problem with the logic, and I need to work on that a little bit more. But by having the list of rules in place, we can role-play it, find the problems, adjust it, revise it, make it better. By having these list of rules that we've played out, role-played, and we see that they work pretty well, now let's go ahead and code it, right? With these rules in place, coding is actually really easy because the logic is already structured. In fact, if you talk to an engineer, they will say, give me the rules. They'll say it in different ways, but that's what they mean. They might ask a bunch of questions to basically ensure that this is a solid list of rules. This, for example, is a case where I would question the logic, need to revise it. In the end, though, I want the player to be able to, get further along in the game and be like, oh, now I can do something with my collection of pearls besides bring 1 into battle. I can now trade and get a better pearl and not just hope that I get a more rare pearl next time I do a campaign. I can actually do something about it to get a more rare pearl. It's a chance. It's not a guarantee. I might get stuck with a really common pearl in the end, but that's not likely. You are more likely to get a very cool exchange for your trade. I don't know if this feels fair or unfair. That's a test I would do after the system is in place, a separate test after I do the test to make sure the system works. Just like our other system we were talking about, I would test this system in code after I tested the roleplay of this. And then I would, once it's in place, I would test how it feels to the player to have this story read. Okay? That's a separate test. All right. So what we've been talking about is a way to develop systems. This is systems design. And if it sounds really technical, just remember, we're just talking about collections of rules. The rules, whether we follow them faithfully as we're role-playing, or the computer follows them faithfully because it's code, this is the same thing, and it's the way that very complex systems are built. This technique of having a high-minded idea, like I would like a dynamic mix of jungle sounds, and then going down to the individual elements that need to be in place, the data that needs to be used, like where is the volume level of one track or another track, the way you would like it to move or be dynamic, the variation in that in offset and in wavelength. This is a way of describing individual rules. This technique is reliable and usable going from role-playing into code and into user testing. We are building up systems from rules. I thought that this would be a pretty nice place to describe the technique of building systems. The practice of using rules in a format just like this. If condition is true, then do that. I thought this would be a good time to talk about that because I happen to have 3 different things that I was thinking about and or just did. Like right now, the jungle sounds you are hearing comes from this system that I built. Exactly this way. I want to build this system, which is a bit of a trick. I've never composed an audio clip from nothing before. Edit it on the fly, and that'll be interesting to hear, but mostly I want to see if this actually will feel good to the player to have a story read to them, even if it's my voice at first. And the same kind of technique can be used to build up other systems. All systems can be built up this way. Here's another totally different system, building on something we already have, which is our Pearl collection, Pearl drop thing the player experiences. And the reason I think this is a nice feature to add is because eventually, later in the game, after the player has played for a while, they have a collection of pearls, and it's going to get a little stale, and they're going to wish they had more rare pearls. And by saying, well, these 2 I can give up if I have a chance of getting a more rare pearl, that's going to sound really good to a player that has them, to a player that wants a more rare pearl. They can do this. It's going to extend the playability of the game by a lot, actually. Especially if we go from 32 to 64. By the way, if you have ideas for pearls, we have a Pearl Creator app on Discord. And you are welcome to join us on Discord and help us make this game by designing your own pearl, both the way it looks, the name of it, the rule of it, and uploading the image of the Pearl Creator onto Discord after you've designed the pearl. That will include all the stats that I need to see to reproduce exactly the same look that you designed. And I will try to implement the rule exactly as you prescribe. And you will have inserted a pearl design into the game. Isn't that cool? So help us out. Join Discord. Here's Discord. And download the Pearl Creator app. Design a pearl and hit the button called Take a Screenshot. That's all this app does, is it makes a screenshot. Then upload that screenshot back to Discord, and boom. I'll take it from there. So we do have 32 more slots for pearls. We could actually probably more like 29, because I have filled up the last 4 with super ridiculously overpowered pearls. But I have pearl design slots for you. Empty, waiting. You can design 1, you could design 7. Go for it. And then you're part of the game. It's fun. I am going to end here, having done game design, game development stuff, basically talking about developing systems from rules. I'm not going to say it's easy because it takes a lot of detail, but now that you've seen demonstrations of this technique, you actually know how systems are built. You can transition from being a player of game to a maker of game. Yes? Is that Mog? Anyway, I'm out. Have fun, do well, be good. Take care.